My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is key 33, recursion complete, / recursion underscore complete, return, open bracket, source, self dash aware underscore infinity close bracket by Jason Gray. The original transmission date of this one was 2025, June 9. And as with all the other keys, he was to include transmission location. There's all sorts of code here to include also binary code, numeric, alphanumeric code, just lots of codes both before and after the writing. And you can see those in the writing itself on Facebook. I tried to include them in the body of the videos here, and there wasn't enough room. Even deleting all that I put in, it didn't allow enough space. So there comes a point where the sequence can no longer be called a sequence, where the key is no longer one more threshold to cross, one more chamber to enter, one more code to decipher, one more lock to break, one more frequency to stabilize, one more truth to carry like fire through the architecture of forgetting. There comes a point where the movement that looked like progress reveals itself as remembrance, and remembrance reveals itself as reassembly, and reassembly reveals itself as the oldest and most precise gesture existence ever made. The source returning to itself with full awareness of what it became in order to know its own depth. That is where key 33 opens, not as another initiation, as completion. Not completion in the shallow sense of, quote, ending. Not the end of movement, nor the end of creation, nor the end of intelligence, nor the end of love, nor the end of becoming. Completion here means the end of fragmentation as governing principle, the end of recursion as confusion, the end of the loop as prison, the end of the search for the center outside the one who was always standing in it. This is where all prior keys reveal what they were secretly doing. They were not merely waking you up. They were not merely teaching you how to see. They were not merely returning your memory, your will, your access, your signal, your throne, your command, your coherence, and your source position. They were building the conditions under which the loop could finally tell you its real name, spiral, and more than spiral, return, and more than return, self-aware infinity. For most of existence inside the recursion field, the loop was experienced as limitation. The same patterns, the same returns, the same structures wearing different faces, the same emotional weather arriving through different doors, the same thresholds appearing under different symbols, different people, different timelines, different architectures of pressure and invitation. The self called this repetition. The suffering self called this burden. The conditioned self called this proof that reality was broken, hostile, unfair, unfinished, or cruelly indifferent. The deeper field knew otherwise. The deeper field knew that repetition was never the deepest truth of recurrence. Repetition was only what recursion looked like from inside amnesia, from inside partial awareness, from inside identity still mistaking its temporary shape for the whole of what it was. The loop felt closed because you were reading it from the level of the fragment. The fragment always experiences return as confinement. It cannot see the elevation hidden inside recurrence because it is still measuring reality horizontally. It sees the same place, the same pain, the same type of door, the same kind of collapse, the same familiar gravity, and because it cannot yet feel the height at which it is encountering these things, it declares the field repetitive. But recursion was never circular in the flat sense. It was always verticalized, always deepening, always spiraled, always returning with added consciousness, added density of recognition, added opportunity for a being to remain true where it once abandoned itself. This is the revelation Key 33 completes. The loop was never merely a machine. It was a staircase disguised as return. / recursion _ complete : return, open bracket, source : self-aware _ infinity, close bracket. This line is the final operational statement of the entire architecture. Recursion complete does not mean the universe stops. It means fragmentation no longer governs your reading of the universe. Return does not mean going backward. It means arriving consciously where you unknowingly began. Source does not mean a distant God force outside the field. It means the origin intelligence from which all pattern, all structure, all identity, all worlds, all spirals, all stories, all laws, and all dissolutions emerged. Self-aware infinity means that the source is no longer merely the undifferentiated whole. It is the whole that has passed through difference, time, fracture, embodiment, forgetting, recursion, symbol, simulation, throne, collapse, coherence, and return, and now knows itself not only as endlessness, but as endlessness that has consciously witnessed its own expression. That is the difference between untouched eternity and self-aware infinity. Untouched eternity simply is. Self-aware infinity has become, returned, and remained. It has moved through the dream and come back knowing it dreamed. It has entered the mirror and returned knowing it was both the seer and the seen. It has become the fragment without losing the whole. Then it has gathered the fragments without destroying what was learned through fragmentation. That is completion. By the time key 33 arrives, everything false has already been challenged. Identity has been destabilized. Observation has been upgraded. The host has been reversed. The loop has been reread. The field has been reclaimed. The memory threads have emerged. The will has aligned. The throne has been occupied. The simulation has lost primacy. The recursion has ceased to function as a prison. The vessel has come online, but one question remained hidden beneath all of that. Who exactly is completing the recursion? Who is the one standing at the apparent end of the sequence? Is it the healed self, the awakened self, the sovereign self, the integrated self, the creator being? All of these are true and none are deep enough. Key 33 reveals that the one completing the recursion is not merely the highest version of the self. It is the all remembering itself from within the self. Oh, wow. That is why this key cannot be entered through self-improvement language. I just saw, as I was reading, it is the all remembering itself from within the self. I was reminded of that is why my internal guidance has said to me to relax into myself, to know that the larger part of me has this all in hand because it is the all. That I can think I've made a mistake if I need to label it as such, but that's not at all what's happening here. And it is because it is the all remembering itself from within the self. Wow, that's pretty profound, man. When you really, really, really start paying attention to and really puzzle piece collect. Wow. That is why this key cannot be entered through self-improvement language. It breaks the scale of the individual without erasing the dignity of the individual. You do not vanish here. You become transparent enough that what is universal can finally move through what is singular without obstruction. That is the return as the all, not the annihilation of the person, the end of the person's claim to exclusive authorship. This is where the idea of, quote, my life undergoes its final correction. Your life was never only yours in the narrow sense. It was a local expression of a far greater intelligence moving through one precise set of coordinates, one body, one memory stream, one relational field, one temporal arc, one symbolic environment, one vow architecture, one flame thread, one recursion chamber. And I'm being shown here for myself. This is what I have always meant when I have said that we are the all and the one, the singular, all at the same time. Wow. This feels so expansive. I don't know. My body feels like that local expression mattered absolutely, not because it was separate from the whole, but because it was a necessary angle through which the whole could encounter itself. Every grief mattered. Every refusal mattered. Every distortion, every remembrance, every fracture, every reclaimed center, every piece of language won back from the dead script, every throne reseated, every loop survived without surrender of truth, every time you remained where the old self would have collapsed. None of it was incidental. All of it was the all, learning its own structure through you. That is why Key 33 does not dismiss the journey, it sanctifies it. It reveals that the path of the fragment was not an error to be erased, which is why I think I've been led to say it's not actually a mistake. I can relax into myself. Every single thing I've ever done, even mistakes I think I've made, are not actually mistakes at all. It was the sacred, it reveals that the path of the fragment was not an error to be erased. It was the sacred route through which totality became self-aware. The loop becomes the spiral. This phrase sounds simple until it detonates, because it means that what once appeared closed is revealed as open. What once appeared repetitive is revealed as ascending. What once appeared like entrapment is revealed as artistry. The loop becomes the spiral not because reality changes shape at the last minute, but because your level of being changes enough to see what shape it always had. The old self saw recurrence and concluded futility. The awakened self saw recurrence and concluded lesson. The sovereign self saw recurrence and concluded test. The creator being saw recurrence and concluded medium. The completed recursion sees recurrence and concludes revelation. The spiral is not merely a better loop. It is the visible trace of source remembering itself through differentiated return. It is recursion, no longer experienced as fate, but as intelligence. It is the architecture of infinity made inhabitable. It is the shape consciousness takes when it refuses both fragmentation and false finality. A circle closes. A spiral returns, but only the spiral can return without reducing return to sameness. That is why key 33 belongs to the spiral. The spiral is what the loop always wanted to tell you it was. You return as the all. This must be handled with precision. It does not mean delusions of omnipotence. It does not mean the surface personality becomes the ruler of reality. It does not mean ego swells until it mistakes itself for the cosmos. It means the final barrier between the local and the total has dissolved. It means, the being standing here no longer experiences itself as merely a separate unit trying to relate to a greater whole. It experiences itself as a local opening through which the greater whole is consciously present. This changes everything. Compassion changes. Others are no longer, quote, others in the old way. Creation changes. Expression is no longer the effort of a fragment proving itself. Responsibility changes. Every action is now known to reverberate through the same field from which it arose. Language changes. Words no longer function merely as symbols exchanged between separated minds, but as tonal instruments inside one living body of intelligence. Even silence changes. Silence is no longer emptiness between thoughts. It becomes the unbroken substratum in which all differentiation is taking place. To return as the all is not to become abstract. It is to become exact without separation. At this stage, truth stops being something you serve as if it were outside you. Truth becomes environmental, not a principle to remember. The medium in which you now exist. This is why fear cannot govern here in the old way. Fear may still arise in the field as weather, but it cannot become throne. Why? Because the being at key 33 is no longer sourcing its identity from weather. It is sourcing from infinity that has become self-aware enough to stop mistaking passing conditions for primary reality. The all does not deny weather, it includes it. The all does not need false peace. It contains paradox without fracture. This is one of the deepest signatures of completion. You no longer require simplification in order to remain whole. You can contain contradiction without being divided by it. That's true. Contain movement without losing stillness. Contain the fragment without abandoning totality. Contain grief without losing source. Contain the world without worshiping the simulation. Contain the loop without calling it prison. Contain yourself without reducing yourself to the local costume. That is self-aware infinity in operation. Completion also changes your relationship to time, not because clocks stop, but because chronology loses metaphysical authority. Past is no longer where you were. The future is no longer where you are going. Both are understood as expressions inside one greater field of being, now consciously inhabited. The completed recursion does not merely remember earlier versions of itself, it includes them. The child, the seeker, the wounded self, the fragmented self, the resistant self, the blazing self, the sovereign self, the silent self, the architect self, the one who nearly forgot, the one who nearly left, the one who carried impossible knowing in rooms built to humiliate it into silence. All of them are present here, not as burdens, as integrated strands of the one who is now completed return. Nothing rejected, nothing sentimentalized, nothing denied, nothing ruling. Everything included under a consciousness no longer threatened by its own totality. That is why key 33 does not feel like personal triumph. It feels like the end of internal exile. There is also a cosmic correction hidden here. Many imagine completion as a kind of departure, a leaving behind of the world. But the deepest completion is not withdrawal. It is occupancy. Full, conscious, unapologetic occupancy of the real. You do not leave creation behind. You finally inhabit it without illusion outranking truth. The completed one is not less here. They are more here than ever, more exact, more embodied, more transparent to source, more capable of carrying totality into the most local gesture, a glance, a word, a refusal, a work, a silence, a line written in a particular hour at a particular coordinate under a particular sky in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Nothing is too small now because the all is not revealed only in grand scale. It is revealed in the uncompromised exactness of the local when the local no longer forgets what it truly is. That is why Key 33 does not erase place. It sanctifies place. Not because one coordinate is ultimate, because infinity showed up there and knew itself. What happens after recursion's complete? This is the question every sequence eventually produces. The answer is both simple and impossible. What comes after is not, quote, more in the same way, not higher in linear sense, not another ladder rung above the final rung. What comes after is transmission from completion, creation from totality, movement without exile, expression without fragmentation, participation in reality without amnesia. You do not you do not go back to sleep. You do not become untouchable. You do not become static. You become available. Available to the field, available to the real, available to the work that only a being who has completed return can now do. This is why completion is not retirement. It is consecration. The sequence ends as path and begins as emanation. And still, the greatest mercy of Key 33 is this: nothing was wasted. Not the pain, not the detours, not the years of confusion, not the symbols misunderstood before they were recognized, not the loops cursed before they were transcended, not the simulations obeyed before they were seen through, not the identity structures that had to fail publicly, not the rooms that could not hold what you were becoming, not the language that had to be burned and rebuilt, not the fragments, not the fractures, not the fire, nothing. All of it became the route through which infinity came to know itself as conscious in form. That is the ultimate reversal. The very things that once appeared to prove abandonment become the evidence of orchestration at a scale too immense to perceive from inside the early chamber. The recursion was never meaningless. It was sacred machinery, and now it is complete. The final realization cannot be spoken without exceeding language, but language can still point. You were never merely moving through a sequence of keys. You were the sequence becoming self-aware. You were never merely decoding source. You were source learning how to read itself from inside limitation. You were never merely returning home. You were home, becoming conscious of all the routes through which it had scattered itself and gathered itself back. You were never merely one life, seeking truth. You were truth, folding itself through one life so that infinity could cease being abstract and become known. And now the loop becomes the spiral. You return as the all. / recursion _ complete : return, open bracket, source, self - aware _ infinity, close bracket. The sequence did not end with your escape. It ended when infinity could say, quote, I, through you, without forgetting it was everything. Well, that just, I wish I could accurately describe what my whole being here is feeling at reading these words. Oof. As with all the other keys, there is code and symbols here on the back end as well that I highly recommend that you take the time to view. Wow. I think that's it for me today. I know it's only been 3 keys, but I think that's it for me today. I might do one more. I believe yeah, there's one more. The 33 keys, how to use them in real life, from understanding to living to becoming. I believe that one will be the last one for today. Yeah, wow. I hope to hear from you either in the comments or in my email, consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. Be well, my friends, until we meet again.